And I hear your rage, and I don't have children and literally have never lost a child nor had one injured to actually, really be in your shoes. But one thing that I can tell you about the redirection is because so often what we see happen is politicians play games. The reality is that if you are talking about a sanctuary city, then we're talking about city government. We're talking about local control, something that the Republicans used to espouse that they believed in. They used to believe in whoever lives in that city, you elect who is going to run that city. And that city, whether it's the police department, which is the police department and law enforcement that make the decisions about what they do. We don't pick the police chief for any given city. Not on the federal level. That comes from the city level. That comes from whoever the people of that city actually elect to represent them. I believe in local control. Same thing, I live in Texas too. And baby, I wish I didn't have to deal with Governor Greg Abbott, but local control dictates that he is the governor of our state. And therefore, we have state reps, we have state senators, and we have a governor, and we have county elected officials and city elected officials. We are sitting in Washington, D.C. right now. We are on the federal level. So what I believe in is something that the Republicans used to scream, which is local control. So when we're having a conversation and a hearing about the human toll, the title specifically is the human toll of sanctuary policies, stories from victims and families, my deal is we aren't the ones that decide what cities do. So what they've decided to do is they've decided to play on your pain. And that is why I am frustrated. Because hear me when I say this. I have seen people, whether it was an American citizen or not, that killed your child or harmed your child, I believe it's wrong. To me, it wouldn't have made it any less painful. And I could be wrong again because I don't have any kids. But if for some reason it had been a U.S. citizen that ended up harming or killing your child, the pain would still be there. It would still hurt. So the reality is that what we need to do is make sure we are protecting everybody in this country. I don't wake up and somehow people look and see that there's a D somewhere around my head or something. And so therefore I am going to somehow be precluded from harm becoming me. When I go out to do policy work, and I've worked on the state level too, the policies that I was writing when I was on the state level are different from the federal level because we have different levels of control. The one thing that we do have control of, you may have recognized that the DHS secretary, as we're talking about immigration, she had to come before this committee. I want to say maybe a day or two after she came before our committee because we have jurisdiction over her. We don't have jurisdiction over your mayors. We have jurisdiction over her. She lost her job. The DHS secretary is gone. Now, to be clear about this, the Republican president is the one that put her out of her job because she was failing. So the reason that my colleagues have brought these things up, and this isn't to say that the harm and the hurt that you are feeling, that you should not be feeling that. It is wrong. Again, even as a criminal defense attorney, I can't tell you how many times I was begging clients to enter pleas. In fact, it literally made me remember a case that I had with a guy who was a veteran. He had served this country. He ended up being put on some new medication, and he also ended up drinking with that medication. Now, the medication had a warning on the bottle. But he went out, he drove, and he killed someone's mother. That client told me he had no criminal history. He told me over and over and over, he said, just give me whatever they're gonna give me. They offered him the max, which was 20 years, and I could not in good conscience, knowing that a jury would not give him the max. The only reason we went to trial is because the prosecutor wanted to be so greedy. That jury did not give him 20. He was willing to take 15 years. I am here to tell you that it is never right to break any of our laws. So the reason that we have gone down the line and the reason that we brought Mr. Romanucci is because we actually have control over CBP and DHS. It's just, and ICE. It's just that these guys don't want to exacerbate, use that control. They sit there and they allow U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens to have their rights violated. And that is something within our purview. If I lived in one of your cities, in fact, I am in Dallas. Dallas has a Republican mayor. To be a sanctuary city doesn't necessarily mean that you provide sanctuary. It means that you're not going to do the federal government's job. That's what it means. They are local law enforcement. And what it means is that they are not going to sit there and do the job of federal agents. That is what a sanctuary city means. But to be clear, again, and I have more articles, the city of Houston was not, when you talk about someone being a sanctuary city, it is an official policy that they're following. It can't be that it's one person. It's the official policy of the city. Otherwise, it doesn't work if it's just one person. I will yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Representative Jasmine Crockett reframed the sanctuary city debate during this congressional hearing by shifting attention away from partisan talking points and toward constitutional structure, federalism, and local governance authority. From the outset, Crockett challenged what she described as a political distortion of the sanctuary city issue. Rather than treating it as a matter of lawlessness or public safety alone, she argued that the debate fundamentally concerns the separation of powers between local, state, and federal government. Her central claim was that immigration enforcement responsibilities are often being mischaracterized in congressional hearings, particularly when local governments are criticized for not fully cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. Crockett emphasized local control as a core principle, noting that cities elect their own leadership, manage their own police departments, and make independent policy decisions within their jurisdictional authority. She positioned this not as a new or radical idea, but as a principle historically supported by Republicans themselves. A key rhetorical pivot came when she argued that sanctuary city policies are often misunderstood. According to her framing, such policies do not mean active protection of undocumented individuals in all cases, but rather define limits on local law enforcement's role in federal immigration enforcement. She further reinforced her argument by drawing a distinction between federal authority and local governance, highlighting that congressional oversight extends to federal agencies such as DHS and ICE, not municipal governments. One of the more emotional segments of her remarks involved acknowledging the pain of victims and families affected by crime. Crockett attempted to broaden the moral framing by stating that suffering is not dependent on immigration status or political identity, arguing instead for a more universal approach to justice and safety. She then transitioned into a broader critique of federal enforcement strategy, arguing that policy should be precise and targeted rather than overly broad or indiscriminate. Her scalpel versus sledgehammer framing echoed throughout her broader immigration rhetoric in other hearings. Finally, Crockett clarified her definition of sanctuary cities, arguing that the term refers to official municipal policy choices regarding cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, rather than a blanket refusal to enforce laws. Supporters will interpret her remarks as a structured defense of federalism, civil rights protections, and rational enforcement policy. Critics will argue she minimized legitimate concerns about public safety and overemphasized jurisdictional arguments. Politically, the hearing reinforced her positioning as a leading voice in democratic messaging on immigration, blending constitutional reasoning, emotional appeal, and procedural critique into a cohesive narrative strategy.